Before you ever move into a house that's been in your family for generations, check what's buried beneath it. In the Blue Ridge Mountains, some things aren't meant to be unearthed. I'm not the kind of man people trust with houses, not anymore. 3 years ago, if you'd handed me a set of keys, I'd have sold whatever they unlocked for a bottle of whiskey and a cheap room to forget in. I was good at forgetting, better at running. But something happened, something I won't get into just yet, and I started trying to claw my way back. One meeting at a time, one day at a time. When my uncle passed, he left me his house up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Not because he thought I deserved it, I'm sure. Probably because there was no one else left. Just me, barely surviving the last few years, and now holding the deed to an old, broken cabin that didn't belong to me in spirit. Even if it did on paper, still, I took it as a sign. Maybe this was where I'd rebuild. The house sat at the end of a long gravel path that looked more like a dried-up creek bed. No neighbors, no cell service. The closest town was 10 miles of winding road and loose rock downhill. And even that place only had a diner, a hardware store, and a gas station that looked like it hadn't updated its signage since 1983. But there was peace here, and I needed peace. The first week was simple. I chopped wood, patched holes in the roof, and spent hours walking through the nearby woods with a thermos of coffee and an old Polaroid I'd found in a closet. I was trying to build habits, real ones. Every night, I wrote a list of things to do. Every morning, I crossed off what I managed. It was small but steady. Steady enough to fool myself into thinking I was healing. But there was something strange about the silence, not the quiet. I expected that, the silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was like the land itself was holding its breath. No birds in the morning, no wind through the trees. Even the old pine boards in the house barely creaked at night. It was as if the place was resisting noise, like it had buried something it didn't want disturbed. On the 8th day, I decided to fix the basement steps. They were warped from water damage and sagged under my weight like wet cardboard. I'd been avoiding that part of the house, honestly. The door was old and swollen in the frame, and it gave off this sour smell whenever I pried it open. Something between mold and metal. Still, I'd made a list. The stairs were on it, and I was trying to be the kind of man who finishes lists. The air down there was thick. Not damp, just still. Like nothing had moved in decades. I descended slowly, holding onto the rail. My boots hit packed earth at the bottom. The room was wider than I remembered, with old stone walls and a low ceiling that made me duck without thinking. There were shelves along the back filled with rusted tools, glass jars with unrecognizable contents, and an oil lamp that surprisingly still lit when I tested it. I found the real damage in the far left corner, a soft spot in the floor. I tapped it with a crowbar. The wood splintered easier than it should have, and underneath wasn't more wood or even dirt, just empty space. A pocket of air. A cavity, maybe? I dropped a small rock in and counted. It clinked once, twice, then silence. It was deeper than a crawl space, too deep. I didn't touch it again that night. I told myself I was tired, but I didn't sleep. That silence, it was listening. The next morning, I returned with gloves, a flashlight, and a chisel. The floor gave way faster than expected. Just beneath the rotting wood was a layer of crumbling earth, and under that, a gap. Not a room, not a root cellar, a trench. It stretched horizontally beneath the house like a scar. maybe 3 feet wide, lined with stone. A ditch dug by hand and covered over long ago. The walls of it were uneven, and as I leaned closer, I saw something pale poking out of the dirt. At first I thought it was a root. Then I saw the curve of the joint, the way it clung to the dirt like a clenched hand. Bone. I jerked back so fast I hit my head on the beam above. My ears rang. My pulse thundered in my throat. But even through all that noise, I thought I heard something else, a whisper. It was faint, like a voice carried through stone. It didn't say a word I could understand, just breath shaped into something that almost had meaning. I called the sheriff's office in town the next morning, told them I might have uncovered a grave. The deputy they sent, Barnes, I think, looked into the trench and scratched his head.
Old,
he said.
Real old. You sure your uncle never mentioned this?
I shook my head.
Well,
he muttered.
You want us to call the Historical Society? They might be interested.
Not if it causes trouble, I said too quickly. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't recent. He gave me a look that hovered between suspicion and pity.
This dirt's been settled for a century at least. You're fine. Probably some Civil War trench. A few of these still get uncovered out here. They didn't bury with headstones. Too fast, too many dead.
He said the words like they didn't matter. Like bones under a house were just part of life. He left me with a warning not to disturb anything further, but I already had. I just didn't know it yet. That night, I dreamed of boots, dozens of them, scuffed leather, muddied soles, all walking in unison through red earth. I woke up gasping. The oil lamp by my bed was lit. I hadn't lit it. The next few days, I avoided the basement. I told myself the trench was just history. I'd watch documentaries about Gettysburg, try to intellectualize it. I even dug out an old book of Civil War letters I found upstairs, maybe trying to find a link, a name, something to put meaning to the trench. Instead, I found a folder tucked between 2 books, labeled March 1865. Inside was a single sheet of yellowed paper, handwritten in a spidery script. They will not be mourned. They are not ours to remember. The ditch is sealed. Let the earth judge them now. I dropped the paper. Something shifted in the walls. No wind, no movement, just the dry sound of dust sifting downward, like something old had just breathed out. I didn't go outside that day, or the day after. I listened, and the whispers came back, louder. It didn't speak in words, not at first. The whispering came from beneath the house, through the boards and stone, like steam hissing from a cracked pipe. I'd stand in the living room, dead still, and feel it in my bones before I heard it in my ears. It was like being underwater, except the water was made of breath and regret, and something else had changed too. The air in the house grew heavier. Not warm, just thick. Like every room held something invisible, waiting for me to slip up and see it. I tried to convince myself it was stress. I even drove into town, spent an afternoon sitting at a plastic table outside the gas station with a lukewarm cup of coffee, pretending the world hadn't cracked open beneath my feet. When the old man behind the counter asked how the house was treating me, I lied and said it was peaceful. He raised one eyebrow.
Up on Hemlock Road?
he asked. I nodded. He was quiet a long time before he finally said,
"Just be careful digging up what ain't yours."
That night, I found dirt on the kitchen floor, a trail of it, leading from the basement door to the sink. There were no footprints, just soil. Cold, damp, and fresh, I locked the basement that night, bolted it shut, moved the fridge in front of it just in case. I didn't sleep. The lamp beside my bed stayed lit until morning. On the 14th day, I woke to find the front door open, not broken, just open, like someone had stepped out or in. The kitchen light was on. I'd turned it off before bed, and on the table, placed exactly where my daily to-do list usually sat, was something else, a rusted dog tag, half buried in more of that same red clay dirt. It read only, W. Kalerksa. That was the first night I heard them speak. Not whispers now. Voices, low and grinding, like stones shifting underground. They came in waves, soft murmurs building to sentences. Not yelling, never shouting. Calm, measured, old.
He returns, unburdened by penance. He walks the floor above the debt. He must be judged.
I didn't remember falling, but I woke up on the floor of the living room. My clothes were damp with earth. My nails were caked with dirt. The basement key, which I'd hidden behind the shed, was in my pocket. I hadn't blacked out in over 2 years. This wasn't a relapse. It was something else. Something deeper. I tried to leave the next morning. Packed my bag. Got in the truck. Drove half a mile down the mountain before the tires blew. Not one. All 4. Shredded. Not slashed. Not punctured, torn. Like someone had raked claws across the treads while I slept. So I walked back, and when I reached the house, the front door was closed again. Locked from the inside, a voice whispered through the keyhole.
We are not done.
I didn't eat for 2 days. I barely drank. Every sound in the house turned sharp, purposeful. Floorboards groaned like footsteps. Pipes hummed like distant drums. And every night, the trench in the basement seemed to grow. I'd never reopened it, but somehow more of the boards rotted away. More dirt collapsed inward. I saw fingers now. Not just bones. Fingers curled as if trying to claw their way upward. That's when the dreams changed. No more soldiers marching. Now I stood in the trench itself, surrounded by men whose faces were eaten away by rot and mud. Their mouths didn't move, but their voices filled the air like fog.
You carry sin, your blood echoes dead. You wear the name of the condemned.
I didn't understand. I wasn't from here. I didn't do anything. I didn't belong to this land or its history. But the next morning, I found a letter in the attic. One of my uncles. A handwritten note dated 1987. They won't stop with me. The land remembers. The trench remembers. He won't listen, but maybe his nephew will. Tell him to never open the floor. Never listen to the whispers. Tell him the Keller name still owes a debt. I stared at that name, Keller, and felt my hands go numb. That was my mother's maiden name. I thought of the dog tag, the whispering voices, the judgment. It wasn't just me they wanted. It was the name, the blood, and now I disturbed them, unearthed them. They were awake. That night, I made my peace. I lit the lamp. I sat on the basement steps and I listened. The whispering turned to chanting, a sound like shovels digging. The trench pulsed with lightless breath. and the last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was a hand, still covered in earth, reaching from the bottom of the trench. I came to lying on cold stone. Basement walls towered above me, but they didn't feel like walls anymore. More like crypt sides, pressed close, damp, watching. The trench in the center of the floor had widened, swallowing nearly half the room. What once looked like a shallow groove now resembled a grave. No, not a grave, a door, and I was already halfway through. The hand that had reached for me was gone, but the dirt where it had risen was still disturbed, fresh, loose, breathing. I tried to stand. My knees gave. Something moved beneath me. Not rats, not roots, flesh. I felt it under the stone. The shifting, the presence. Like hundreds of bodies writhing in the dirt just inches below, each one aware of me. I heard them again, clear now, direct, not whispers.
You are Keller, you are the blood. You walk free above what should not be forgotten.
The air thickened. The walls pulsed. The light, if there ever had been any, fled. In the pitch dark, I saw their faces. They didn't glow. They pressed. From the dirt. From the cracks. From the stones and corners. Dozens of them. Men in ragged Confederate uniforms, skin stripped away in patches. Lips missing. Eyes pale with rot, their mouths moved now. Not just sounds, but words, a chorus, a sentence.
The weight must be measured.
Suddenly, I wasn't in the basement anymore. I stood ankle deep in the trench, but it stretched wider now, miles wide. Like a sunken road cutting through the mountains, lined with corpses that watched as I passed, and ahead of me, seated on a throne of rifles and rusted spades, sat the one I hadn't seen before, the judge. He wore no uniform, no rank, just a wide-brimmed hat pulled low and a noose around his neck, frayed and torn. His face was a void. Where features should be was only shifting shadow, like smoke trying to become a man. He raised one skeletal hand, and the chanting ceased.
Your line spilled blood for a lie.
The voice echoed from all around.
Your name built walls on stolen graves. You inherited comfort. Now you inherit the cost.
I shook my head. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't even know.
You do now.
The trench trembled. The dead leaned in. A single voice among them hissed. Your uncle brought us breath. You gave us names. I realized then, my uncle hadn't just lived with this. He'd fed it, buried it. Maybe he'd thought locking it away would silence the past. But I'd reopened the wound, and now the land wanted what it was owed. Is there atonement? I asked. The judge tilted his head.
You may descend, or another may rise in your place.
A trade, a choice. I could give myself, or lead another here to take my place. I thought of people I hated, men who had wronged me. Names flickered in my mind like matches lit in the dark, but as quickly as they came, I knew I couldn't do it. I'd spent too long running from guilt, from pain, from truth. If I left now, if I damned someone else, I wouldn't just be fleeing the house. I'd be sealing myself into a cage of cowardice that would never rust shut. I stepped forward. The trench opened. Dirt didn't fall. It parted like a mouth. Like an invitation, the voices began again, not hateful now, but hungry.
He accepts, he descends, the debt is marked.
As the ground gave way beneath me, I fell not into blackness, but memory. I saw the faces of men I never knew, a boy caught in crossfire, a woman shielding her child from blue and gray uniforms alike, a soldier crying over a brother he shot by mistake. I saw their pain, their last thoughts, their pleas, and I knew it had never been about me. It was about remembrance. When I struck the bottom, the earth folded above me like a closing book, but I wasn't dead, not yet. I lay there, breathing, still surrounded by the silence of bones that had finally been heard. The house still stands. My truck is still out front. The fridge still hums in the kitchen, but I'm no longer above ground. I've joined them. And sometimes, when the wind is right and the moon is high, you can hear the whispering begin again from beneath the floorboards. Sometimes I still dream of the house. In the dream, I'm walking down the mountain road. The leaves crunch. The air bites. I can hear the creak again, the one behind the kitchen window. I see the porch light is on. My keys are still in my coat. Everything's exactly how I left it. But I don't go in, because now I know what's underneath. There's a reason no one builds here anymore. Why the family line ran dry. The house was never cursed. It was guarded by the ones we tried to bury with our forgetting. If someone new moves in, I wonder, will the floor shift again? Will the whispers return? Will the judge rise once more? I hope not, but the land remembers, and the land decides. So if you ever find yourself alone on a mountain road, and an old house calls your name, ask yourself, what lies beneath, and do you deserve to stay above? If you felt the earth shift while listening to this tale, leave a comment below and tell us what you'd do if the floor opened beneath your feet. And remember, when the whispers start, never look down.